25 past now, and our cabinet of curiosity is waiting. Jem Roberts, who's a local writer and comedian, he's written official histories of Blackadder, and his biography of Fry and Laurie is out next year. His latest work is Tales of Britain, and it brings to life the ancient folk stories and fairy tales from Britain's rich history, so all sorts contained within this. He regularly performs these tales live in the character of Brother Bernard, who's an ancient monk. And so, well, we thought we would ask Brother Bernard to tell us a story or two throughout this week. So today's is entwined with the history of Bath and its world-famous mineral waters, the tale of Blackadder and the pigs.
Hello, I'm Brother Bernard. If you've visited Bath's Roman baths, you'll have probably seen King Blackadder up on his throne, the founder of the ancient city. Legend has it that Blackadder was a Celtic prince from Londinium in the 8th century BC. At college in Athens, Blackadder picked up a bad case of spots and was exiled by his horrible father, King Rudhud. "Get away from here, spotty face," the old man grumped. "Come on, Dad, it's me, Blackadder, let me in." "You're no son of mine, spotty spotface," came the reply. So poor spotty Prince Blackadder travelled far out west, where he got a job as a lowly swineherd. In the foothills of Salisbury Hill at Swainswick, Blackadder's pigs, who were also spotty all over just like he was, discovered the first ever mud bath beauty treatment by leaping into the muddy hot springs in the Avon Valley and covering themselves in the rich mud. When Blackadder lured them out of the gloopy, bubbly mud with a trail of acorns, he saw that all their spots had suddenly disappeared. And so, being a clever lad, he jumped in the water himself, curing his spottiness at last. And so he returned east to Londinium and claimed the throne of Britain, before coming back, pretty pink porkers in tow, to found the city of Bath, so everyone can enjoy the healing bubbles to this day. So if you're in the Bath area, why not explore north to Swainswick to stand in the very spot that legend tells us the real Prince Blackadder once stood? And if you visit the Tales of Britain website, you can find a total of 77 stories and tourist spots to enjoy and explore.
Oh, the pretty pink porkers. So Tales of Britain, it's currently funding on Unbound Publishing, actually, so if it's the kind of thing that you fancy being a supporter of, they'd like to hear from you. So big thank you, Jem Roberts, local writer and comedian, and with us throughout this week, sharing some of his folk tales. Now, Jem is a local writer and a comedian, and he's written lots of books, including the official histories of Blackadder, and his biography of Fry and Laurie is out next year. His latest work, though, is Tales of Britain, and he's set about trying to bring to life some of the ancient folk stories and fairy tales from Britain's rich history. He regularly performs these tales live in the character of Brother Bernard, who happens to be an ancient monk. So we thought that we would ask Brother Bernard to share a story every day this week.
Hello, I'm Brother Bernard, and I'm proud to present for you lovely Southwesterners a story a day selected from the new book Tales of Britain, in which we chart the greatest ancient tales of Wales, Scotland and England on a map of Britain and retell them for a 21st century audience. Molly Whuppie was one of the greatest heroes the Western Isles of Scotland ever produced. Never mind Princess Merilla from Brave, Molly was braver than brave. The youngest of 3 young girls, Molly Whuppie earned a name for herself as a wise, wily destroyer of ogres and bogles on the Isle of Islay and all around the Hebrides. One time, she and her sisters were captured by a big, bogey green bogle who had stolen the Whuppie family's precious trinkets: a golden teapot, a golden egg pot, and of course, a golden potty. This bogle captured all 3 Whuppie girls and was going to boil them all up for breakfast, until Molly had the clever idea of swapping places with the bogle's own 3 daughters, who got put into a sack and pounded into a pulp. And then Molly stole back all the gold trinkets, and all 3 Whuppie sisters ran for their lives. When the evil bogle realised what had happened, he chased them across the island until they came to a bridge which tapered to only a hair's breadth. The 3 Whuppie girls crossed with nimble lightness, but that bogle could not follow, and fell crashing down into a ravine below, and burst like an angry boil in a squelch of snot and nastiness that smelt like weak old kippers. But brave Molly Whuppie lived to have further adventures, Adventures so wild you can visit the Isle of Islay to this day and still hear fresh tales of her bravery and cleverness. We should celebrate a legendary British hero like Molly, who deserves to be as famous as King Arthur, Robin Hood, Dick Whittington, and Jack the Giant Killer. So head on over to the Tales of Britain website to support this folklore campaign, and you will find 77 stories and tourist guides to the real site of every single legend.
So Tales of Britain, yes, it is being funded through Unbound Publishing, so you can offer your support if you would like to for Tales of Molly Whoopie and more. We'll have another one on tomorrow's programme. We've just got time to squeeze in this bunch. Simon and I were just reflecting on the eclectic mixture of stories we've already talked about on the show, and we've got another one for you now. It comes courtesy of Jem Roberts. Now, Jem is a local writer and comedian. He's written official histories of Blackadder, and his biography of Friar Laurie comes out next year. He's done another book, though. It's Tales of Britain, and it brings to life the ancient folk stories and fairy tales from Britain's rich history, and he regularly performs these tales live in the character of Brother Bernard, who is an ancient monk. So we thought we'd ask Brother Bernard to share a story with us every day this week.
Hello, I'm Brother Bernard. We sort of return to Somerset today with the old legend of the Apple Tree Man. It takes place at Christmas time in an old farm where two brothers lived. In those days, it was the youngest who inherited, but this youngest, Ned, was a horrible master. He beat the old donkey and flogged on the old ox, and made his poor brother Ted pay 6pence rent for the old crumbling cottage, while the poor fellow worked away in the farm every day. But Ned was also superstitious, and when he heard there was old Roman gold hidden on the farm, and only the old donkey knew where it was, he told Ted to prepare that donkey for Christmas Eve, where on the stroke of midnight all animals are able to talk, and he would find out where the gold was hidden. Ted did as he was bid, and as the sun slid over the hills that December 24th, he bedded the animals down with some holly and went out to wassail in the orchards for a good apple harvest the following year. He mulled a tankard of cider and poured it into the apple tree roots, singing, "Here's to ye, me apple tree, and many apples we shall see." All of a sudden, with a magical rustle and a rumble, one tree came magnificently to life and introduced himself as the Apple Tree Man. "You seem a good lad, Ted," the Apple Tree Man told him. "Ta for the cider, and in return for your kindness, look among me roots." Ted did just that and found a huge pot brimming with gold pieces. "Just you keep that to yourself, lad," the Apple Tree Man went on, and after a big thank you from Ted, he settled his roots back in the soil and turned back into a tree. That night, Ned went into the old shed, and as midnight struck, the farm's two animals spoke. "Here's that idiot Ned," the donkey brayed. "I suppose he wants to find out where that gold's hidden." "That sounds about right," the ox replied. "But he's too late, isn't he, because we knows that gold's already gone." Ned passed out with fright, but somehow, when he woke up that Christmas morning, he was a changed man, and invited his old brother Ted round for a fine goose, and never mistreated him or the animals ever again. As the sun shone through the apple trees that afternoon, they knew that a bumper crop of apples would be harvested next year, and there would be cider for all. So while ye drink up thy cider, please do check out the Tales of Britain project to support a new guide to the stories and legendary locations of Britain, with 77 stories from Somerset and elsewhere.
That's Jem Roberts there, a.k.a. Ancient Monk Brother Bernard. We'll have another story around about this time on tomorrow's show.
Hello, I'm Brother Bernard. This is our second journey out of Somerset, and indeed out of England, to tell the tale of one of Wales's greatest heroes, King Bran the Blessed. He was a giant of a man, so big he was like an entire platoon glued together, and up on his crown his friends the ravens would gather and chatter and squawk. One day, when his sister Branwen was being mistreated by her husband, the King of Ireland, Bran waded out from his mighty castle at Harlech on the Welsh coast and crossed the Irish Sea with an armada of ships in his wake. In these Irish wars, the mighty Bran fought bravely, biffing bad guys left, right and centre, lying over great chasms to allow his armies to march over him like a bridge, punching castles right in the face until they crumbled, and so on, usual war stuff. And although the Irish had a magic cauldron which could raise any soldier from the dead, Finally, the Welsh triumphed against this horde of Irish zombies. However, poor Bran the Blessed had been slashed with a poisoned sword and would have been a goner indeed if he didn't have the splendid idea of stopping the poison by cutting his own head off. It's a tricky surgical skill if you can pull it off, and from that day forward, Bran's friends carried his enormous head around as they swapped old jokes and relived old days on the mystical lost island of Gwales, out in Ceredigion Bay. Eventually, however, even old Bran ran out of juice, and so his head was carried far out east to Londinium, where he was placed high on the White Hill to see off invaders from over the seas, and in time the grass grew over Bran the Blessed's head, and a tower was built atop it. You can visit this site any day you're out east, as it was the Tower of London that was built on the White Hill, and Bran's friends the Ravens live there to this day. When they fly away, they say the country's done for. So visit the Tower of London, or indeed the magical Harlech Castle, to get a feel of where Bran the Blessed once stood. And if that whets your appetite, head on over to the Tales of Britain site to support a collection of 77 such tales and tourist destinations. Or we'll send Bran round.
You know, such gentle, lulling music and always such graphic tales that Brother Bernard chooses to share with us on the programme. Tales of Britain, if you'd like to find out more about it, it's currently funding on Unbound Publishing, so if you want to get involved in the project, you can see it there. And we'll have another story on tomorrow's show, just around about 25 next year. The latest thing that he's been busy working on is something called Tales of Britain, and the thing that he does with this is to try and bring to life some of the ancient folk stories and fairy tales from Britain's rich history. And what's more, he regularly performs these tales live in the character of Brother Bernard, who is an ancient monk. So, all this week, Brother Bernard has been telling us a story.
Hello, I'm Brother Bernard. For the final story this week, we end on perhaps the one most famous hero in the collection, whose legends are rooted all around the southwest, King Arthur. Many say that Arthur was born down in Tintagel in Cornwall, where he drew the sword Excalibur from Merlin's famous stone, making himself rightful king of all Britain. Many say he held his court at Camelot, with a round table based on any number of ancient hill forts around Wiltshire and Somerset, where a Romano-British warlord may have led the resistance against the English invaders. Legend tells us that Arthur's greatest triumph was at the Battle of Baden Hill, which brings us right home again to Bath, where our first story was based. But the most famous site of all, Arthur's supposed final resting place, is here in Somerset at Glastonbury Tor, or rather, as it was known then, the Isle of Avalon. Maybe it is all the dreams of medieval monastic conmen, but any trip to Glastonbury can give a lover of Arthurian legend the willies. It's said that the mighty king was usurped by his evil nephew, or indeed son, Mordred, at the Battle of Camlan. And although he and Excalibur vanquished Mordred's forces, King Arthur himself was mortally wounded. It was only once his loyal servant Sir Bedivere had cast Excalibur back out into the waters of Somerset, where it was accepted by the Lady of the Lake, that Arthur was finally carried off to the Isle of Avalon by Morgana le Fay and her Sisters of Mercy, and he and his wife Guinevere were laid to rest either there or on the site where Glastonbury Abbey would eventually be built. But of course, we know full well that Arthur is only resting and will arise to help the people of Britain in their darkest hour when the time is ripe. And maybe he has been oversleeping a bit in recent years. Even if you don't believe any of this, and there are many, many claims on the Arthur legend from Scotland down to France, visiting Glastonbury is still exciting, and the tour is, after all, also the entrance to the fairy kingdom of Gwyn ap Nuth, so there's another reason to visit. And there are 77 places like this given tourist guides in Tales of Britain, with a story for each. So please support this campaign, and let these ancient stories live again in the 21st century. The end.
That's Brother Bernard there, our ancient monk, aka Jem Roberts, writer and comedian. He is also stopping in with Dr. Phil tomorrow morning. He's going to be the happy hour guest, or one of the two happy hour guests. He's also got a clown on in the same hour as well, so that's going on